Hello and welcome to The Right Idea, where we discuss the people, policy, and politics that drive Texas. I'm your host, Brian Phillips. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And for the second week in a row, Derek Cohen has abandoned us. He will not be here for the show, but that's okay because we have a very special guest. We have a fantastic guest. I'm super excited for the first time on the show. First time, welcome to the pod. The chairman of the Republican Party, Abraham George, is with us. Chairman George, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, well, let's have some fun. First, by way of bio, I mean, you've been a part of the party apparatus for a long time now, former county chairman of Collin County and a former SREC member of the state party, and then parlayed that and just shot right to the top of the party.
Yeah, shot right is the right word. I mean, I don't know if you were part of that election at the convention. That was fun.
Yeah.
Not those days. It wasn't fun for me back then, but it's fun looking back. But yes.
Well, now that you won, you can look back on it fondly, and say, we did our hard work and we were successful. But with that, we know that you're the chairman of the Republican Party. I'm going to firmly put on my 501c3 hat, and this is the right idea. So we talk about policy and policy solutions, which you have a big hand in as well. So I'll get your thoughts on that. But first, we have to talk about the biggest story in Texas, of course. The biggest story in Texas, which is the return of Luka Doncic to Dallas last night.
That is correct. I tweeted out, I wasn't able to watch the entire game, but every time I watched, every 5 minutes or so, less than 5 minutes or so, I guess it turned into a Fire Nico.
Yeah, Fire Nico chance.
Chance. And Luka did great. I mean, put in 45 points, and there is no better success than revenge. I mean, better revenge than success, like Donald Trump said. So
and that was the ultimate revenge then. Like you said,
right.
45 points, and he left the game early.
Yeah.
Standing ovations all throughout. Now, where are you on that? Were you supportive of his success, or is it the anger and the frustration of how the deal went down? What consumes you more?
I love him as a player. I'm a huge Mavs fan, but yesterday I think I was kind of like I want him to succeed.
That's the hard part, right? Because you want to root for Luka, but nobody wants to root for the Lakers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's Nico kind of put us in that position, so it's just what it is.
What about the conspiracy theories? Are you in on all? That's just a lot of fun, right?
That's just But one of the things is mentioned in many times is the amount of money we got or what we got for the trade is kind of concerning. It's like, hey, Luka is in his prime time and prime shape. Well, that's one of the things they actually talked about. But still, he's a great player. So what we got in the wound,
right? Because you're losing him anyway. But if you'd gotten 8 or 9 draft picks and a couple, first rounders, okay, fine, they're rebuilding the team, whatever. But an aging, and a superstar in his own right, but an aging star and a couple of these guys. A couple of Jimmys and Joes on the side, and instead you lose your franchise.
Well, you said it. I'm not saying it.
All right. Well, let's jump into the policy side of things. And but I do that. So I'm just personally curious on this particular issue, which is, I think a lot of people think, during the legislative session, the parties, both Democrat and Republican, just kind of take a back seat real quick and just let the policy apparatus kind of handle things, and then as soon as the sine die, then you're off to the races and it's all politics all the time. That's not the case. So what do you do on a typical day during the session?
Well, most of the days, like today, which is kind of one of the regular days for me, I'm either in Austin or in some parts of Texas advocating for our policies, especially our priorities. If I'm here in Austin, I'm meeting with the legislators. I can go into Austin at the Capitol on a given day and see 6, maybe 10 SREC members who are there, county chairs who's there. So we're here. We're actively advocating for our platform and our priorities, our principles. Like one would be limited government, which is a big fight today at the Capitol on the budget itself. So so we're here all the time. And the other thing we do is we ask the grassroots to show up and have rallies here, have conversations with the legislators. It's a full-time, all-in time frame, time for us.
And how much of your job is, you said you take the priorities and the policy priorities and take them to the members, and it sounds like you're lobbying on behalf of the party platform, but how much of it also is kind of like being a facilitator or at least a liaison to the grassroots or to the people of Texas, learning about what's going on up here or hearing what the strategies are or whatever it is, and then taking that message back to the grassroots?
I would say it should be about 50-50, but unfortunately, most of the time, that's not the case. It's more lobbying here at the office, at the Capitol, and staying here at the office. But we do have a pretty decent comms team now, and our staff is involved, the SREC is involved. I wish I could message back to the grassroots a lot more if I have a little bit more time, a little bit more resources, but a lot of times that's not the case. But one good thing is there's a bunch of other groups out there who is advocating for this, and they're kind of keeping the grassroots informed on what's happening at the Capitol, so that helps a lot.
Yeah, I've been really pleased, just personally being part of that grassroots and part of that, the organizations that help kind of organize the conservative movement, that on a lot of issues, they're really, we love a good circular firing squad, right? Like conservatives love to tell other conservatives that they're not really conservative. But this session, it really feels like on a lot of issues, we haven't had that. So I'd love to get your perspective on kind of the grassroots side of things. But also it feels like part of it is because there is unity at the top, and you do have the big three who are meeting every week and discussing issues and doing press conferences together. So how much does that dynamic kind of roll downhill and feed kind of what the grassroots are doing?
It actually helps a lot when we have governor going out and talking about taxpayer-funded lobbying, or lieutenant governor talking about it, or stop sexualizing our children, or working on the protecting our grid and election integrity. So that helps a lot because they have a much bigger bully platform than most of the grassroots entities have, and people do listen to them. And so this time around, even in a school choice, that all three of them are aligned. We think we'll find out next week, I guess, or a week after. So it helps a lot when the top brass is on our side. It just helps.
There's nobody with a bigger bully pulpit, of course, than the President of the United States. And so I don't know if we've hit 100 days yet. Maybe we're past it or so. But what's your evaluation of Trump and the sort of shotgun start that he's had? Obviously the big issue right now is tariffs. Texas is the most important state in the country, and we are very conservative in Texas, and so we drive a lot of the messaging and policy and all that, what happens. So it's really important what your take is and what Texans' take is on the national scene. So what are you hearing from the grassroots? What is your evaluation of kind of Trump's first 100 days?
I think the grassroots are all in. I haven't heard any grassroots go out and say, well, my stock portfolio is, it's gone down. Everyone's have.
Thank you, Joe Biden.
Yeah, but the grassroots are. There may be some confusion on tariffs, and I'm a huge fan of tariffs when it comes to leveling the playing field. I think China, I have vendors, friends that I know who do business with China, and they don't play by the rules. They've been a member of WTO for forever, and they just say yes to everything and go do whatever they want. They should be a tariff on them for 400%, 500%. It needs
Don't
to
give
come
Trump
to
any ideas here.
It needs to come to a place where every business in America can afford to do business on an international on level. Italy, I think the Prime Minister of Italy is coming over next week or something to have negotiations with the U.S. directly instead of going through the EU. I know India is doing it. I know there are many countries. Vietnam is doing it. Japan is doing it. So it comes to a place, okay, every country is looking at it, okay, this guy actually is doing the tariff. We didn't think he was going to. Now we got to go figure out a way to get new trade agreements, which will help the United States over time. It may not see the results in the next 3 days, but probably in the next 3 to 4 months, we will start to see, okay, we can actually send stuff to China now and sell there. We don't get to sell in China unless you make that product in China. So it needs to have a level playing field, and I think he's doing a great job. I don't know if you saw the executive orders. We posted something, 115 so far, and the last one I saw, I think it was yesterday, was about water flow in shower heads. So, like, even some of the most common things, he's
like
doing
the water pressure in
water
the shower?
pressure, right? It's like, and he said something like, now I had to stand in my shower for another 15 minutes. So things like that. It's just common things that regular people can just relate right away. It's like, the water is not coming out properly. He said it's just coming out like drip, drip. I'm not sure what kind of shower head he's using, but it's those kind of things. And Trump's just one of those personalities. People just either hate him so much or just love him so much.
He does live in government housing, so it wouldn't surprise me that that maybe the pipes are a little faulty or not up to snuff. Yeah. No, but it is true. I mean, that's the kind of thing. We've talked about that a lot on the show. Is I don't know what the executive order would be or what the nature of the law or the force of that law would be to force utility companies to increase their pressure. But to your point, it does hit home. People have those problems. I mean, I complained about about how the regulations are killing our appliances, and now I have to run my dryer 3 times in order to get anything dry, which runs up my utility bills. Things like that. They are very relatable to him, and whether or not he can really do anything about it or not, because the TDS is so strong on the left, right, they'll be the first ones to jump up and say, that's crazy. Why would we do that? And like 90% of the country is like, no, wait, I like that. Like, I like what he's talking about. But they'll, announce themselves as being opposed to this because they have such terrible Trump's derangement syndrome.
Right. I saw a video of a Democrat senator, I forgot its name. He had multiple Teslas in the past, and last week he sold them all and went and bought a F-150. And someone said, I think it was Charlie Kirk who said, only Trump can make a liberal go buy an F-150. So it's a fun time in politics, especially in D.C.
Very typical. Very typical. What do you make? And this last kind of question, I do want to jump into all of our Texas policies, but we never get to talk about a range of issues like this. We always have experts on that want to talk about their one bill or whatever it is. But what do you make about the fall of the left or the polls right now for Democrats after this big loss? I mean, number one, no one expected it to be the landslide that it was, and so that's probably had to hurt. No one expected that the issues that came up to the top were going to be so bad, or that Biden and his administration would be caught off guard so bad as they did, and then it's continued, and you now have a Democratic Party where only 20% or 25% of Americans say that they are supportive of it. I don't want to dance on any graves here. That's not where I'm leading on this, because that's not an interesting conversation. What I am questioning though is how do conservatives prevent maybe the hubris of saying they're the left is in such bad shape, we can just walk through the next legislative session and we'll get all of our priorities. Or in DC they think we're just gonna go run roughshod over them, and then of course with the next election we don't need to do the work. Everybody's gonna vote Republican. How do you prevent that kind of hubris as the party chairman from taking hold?
Well, I tell all my legislators, I say the easiest way for us to lose next time is not keeping our promises. That is going to be a huge issue for all Texans and all Americans. You make a promise during a campaign cycle and you don't fulfill that promise, people will say, well, you're not any better than the other side. Mm-hmm. That's one. The other is just the apathy the grassroots could potentially have. Wisconsin is a prime example of that. In the last cycle in Texas, we had southern border. South Texas was a major target for Texas GOP and many other groups. And we flipped, out of the 14 counties, the Democratic counties, we flipped 12 of those to Republican. We have over 1 million brand new people on the Republican side that showed up on the Republican ballot for us. So there's a huge amount of work to be done. As soon as the session is over, we're shifting gears. We're going back to them and saying, okay, this is all the things we did. This is what we promised, and this is what we fulfilled. Now we want you to come to us because we're going to continue to stand for Texas. We're going to continue to stand for conservative values. Democrat Party has a brand new chair now. The reason is the former chairman came right after the election and said, well, some of the policies that we've been pushing may be not the right policies. And
wow.
I think
That's a no-no.
Yeah, he just was being honest, looks like. And the day after, he came out and announced that he is resigning and apologized for his statement. So
suddenly needs to go spend more time with his family, apparently.
Yes. So he got pushed out because he finally made sense one time. And they have a new chairman. I hope that he's as radical as the former one or worse, so it makes my life a little more easier. But, the Republicans have to work harder to keep, because the people have given us a mandate. They trusted us with a set of priorities, and we got to get that done.
That stat you said, very interesting. It's also kind of a harbinger, right? Which is, or can be a double-edged sword. When people start voting, they tend to keep voting in election after election.
Yeah.
But because they're new voters or because they're flip voters, that means they could go the other way in the very next election.
You got about 4 years, 2 cycles to confirm everyone on our side. Yeah.
Well, let's get into some of those campaign promises that conservatives made over the last couple of years. The first one, because, this is TPPF, we're contractually obligated to talk about it. School choice has to be first. In years past, it was Republicans in the state legislature that were the holdouts. Not relitigating everything that happened the last couple of years, but that's not the case anymore. And yet there's still, those arguments are still out there, and it didn't change people's perspective just because their member changed. It didn't necessarily change their perspective on issues or what their concerns are. And so I know that you're a big part, you've been publicly supportive of the ESAs and of SB2 and HB3 and those kinds of things. So when you're in front of a Republican audience and they have legitimate, concerns about that, what's your message to them about why we should go forward?
Well, I've tell them two sides of it. One is look at the public education system as it is today. We've been keep funding it, and more money is not a solution. We've learned that over the last few decades, right? And the other side is this school choice values or priority has been a priority for the Republican Party since Reagan era. Ronald Reagan talked about it. And all the way to 2024, 2025, we saw a huge number of legislators who didn't make it on their primaries because they were not on board with the school choice as it is. School choice is a priority for the Republican Party. The confusion a lot of times is what does that mean for homeschoolers or private schools who want to teach Judeo-Christian values or some specific curriculum? What does that look like for them? Are they going to be under the government's thumb on you can't teach this, you got to do this, things like that? And HB3, I've read that bill more than 4 or 5 times, I guess, and I've shared it with many of my friends who put together those school choice programs in other states. And every single one of them came back and said, this is one of the best we've seen for a start. We're going to have to fix as we learn over time. There may be an issue here or issue there, that we will fix that. But if you don't start it, we'll just keep funding the public education who keeps pushing the woke curriculum on our kids. And not every school district is bad. I keep telling people that. But there is enough that this is a necessary step. And out of the 5.5 million kids now, this is going to 100,000 children. We're not talking about a huge universal system that that comes to the entire state. This is really a pilot program, in my opinion. So
pilot program, but will be the largest launch of a school choice program ever in the history of the country. Because we're Texas, we have to be able to say that.
We got to be able to do that.
But it's your point about not every school's bad, and I think sometimes the message from school choice opponents can get twisted into that. A lot of times it's not because the school's bad; it's just whatever's going on at the school. It's not a fit for that child, and so they need a different experience, and they shouldn't have to uproot their lives and move away from grandma and mom's job and everything in order to get that different experience that works for them. So I think that's a really good point. Also, the governor made cross promotion here, our shameless promotion from my boss's podcast. Greg Sindelar, our CEO, interviewed the governor, and he made that very exact point that you're making, which is they have learned, like the authors of this bill have learned from other experiences that other states have had, including the mistakes that they made. Right. And he mentioned, you've got examples of people gaming the system and using the money for things that are not appropriate. So what was the loophole that they exploited? How do we close it in our legislation? And so there was a very thoughtful process into making the best bill that any school choice, advocate has ever seen.
Yeah, I usually tell everyone the Senate is the most conservative chamber we have, and which is true. But in this case, HB 3 looks a lot better than the SB 2. I mean, just putting it out there.
Hey, man, we just started talking about the big three getting together and having lunch. Now you're trying to divide the two. No, it's great. So we obviously have the, looking forward, we have the big debate on the House next week. Yeah. And we will look forward to that. Let's get into the number one issue for Texans for the last 5 years has been, outside of a little bit during COVID, what has been border security, rightfully so. In fact, the whole nation usually is that's the number one issue. But of course, we have Trump in the office now, and so we actually have a partner in the White House who's actually doing their job, so we can focus on the things that the states need to do. Are you at all worried that, like we saw with, the election results, it's like, oh, okay, well, we can take our foot off the gas in Texas because we've got Trump?
Not on border security. The reason I say that, and the party agrees, and the legislators agree on this, and I'm glad they do. We could have another Biden administration in 8, 10, 12 years, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want to have this all over again. So we need to have, this is a perfect time for us to put together rules and regulation on our books and say, okay, if you violate our border, in the Texas side, you're going to be arrested and deported. We want to have that and not get challenged, and this is a perfect time to do that. So there is enough legislators and there's enough bills that would do what we need. Again, the question is, are we going to get the hearing on that and get it passed and get it to governor's office? But we cannot take our foot off the gas on this issue because this issue is going to come back.
Is it still an animating issue at the grassroots?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, imagine this. We have 21 million people who are illegally here, right? And how many are we going to deport? I mean, we're deporting at a level that if we continue to do at this level, it's going to take us decades to remove everyone. So the best solution is close the border and not let this happen again and then fix the problem we currently have. So we can't have one more of this for sure. So that's a major issue for Grassroots.
The next issue, which is actually growing and to become the number one issue, and in fact, I think on social media it is the number one issue that's being talked about, is property taxes. Yeah. And we do polling here every couple of months. I've been polling this property tax question. I think we ask, is it a burden for you and your family? We've been asking that question for 5 years. And last month, I think it was February, so 2 months ago, the highest it's ever been. 81% of Texans say that property taxes is a burden for them and their family, which is astonishing to me. What's your message to legislators on that issue?
Well, there's two things. One, property tax somehow didn't make it to the top 8 priorities at the convention. Because we have so many issues that we had to prioritize, and border security was huge at that time because Biden was in office. So I put together a working group of people who can find the bills and go to the legislator and lobby for those bills. And property tax is probably a number one issue for most Texans, regardless of Republican or Democrat. You got to pay your taxes.
That's right.
And we recently had a testimony from one of a veteran family who was in his early 80s, and he came over and he had a conversation, and he said, I paid off my house about 35 years ago, and now I'm taking a mortgage on it to pay the property tax. That just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And he's on a fixed income of pension and Social Security and things like that. And he has a granddaughter who is in college today, and his whole thing was, I was going to leave the house for her, and I wouldn't be able to do that anymore because it's got a mortgage on it. So it's a very heartbreaking issue for all Texans. It doesn't matter, like I said, Democrat, Republican, whatever. So this is a major problem for us, and I like what I'm seeing, but not enough. That's the problem. Governor Abbott asked for $10 billion. The budget seems to have Senate had $6 billion. Now the House has 3.6, I think. It's really not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough to fix this. And it also needs to go to a place where the local ISDs and cities and counties are not raising your tax based on the value of your property goes up. It's just nuts. So that needs to be a multi-pronged tactical attack on that thing, because it is
one of the issues my colleague James Quintero always brings up is that in certain instances, regardless of how much tax relief the state is providing, the locals will move in and take it away. They'll essentially steal your tax cut, so that if you're paying, whatever is $800 a month in property taxes, if you were supposed to get a $200 cut, they just raise it the $200 so that you keep paying, and so you don't ever actually see relief. And because this issue is so, in fact, we've actually seen in certain instances where they only raised it $150, and so even though they were raising your taxes, they were saying, oh, everybody's getting this tax cut because you're paying less. They've got some really, really tricky ways, and we've just recently happened on a couple of new ways in which the local governments are trying to lie and deceive to get tax increases that we'll be exposing pretty soon. But that's a real issue. I mean, that's Dan Patrick has mentioned that after this year it'll be up to like $51 billion in tax relief the last 3 sessions, and yet everybody's tax bills are still going up. Does that issue? I mean, I know this is really complicated for most people, but those are the issues that are going to determine whether or not our bills actually go down.
That's right. So at the end of the day, a regular Texan who goes to work in the morning and come home and want to watch Mavs game and go to sleep, right? And then that person's worry is not how we get there. They don't care how much politics we can talk about it. They care about did I pay $10,000 last year? Am I paying $15,000 this year? Is it going to go down to $12,000, or is it going to be $8,000? So when we keep saying we give you the biggest property tax relief and their bill goes up, they're like, it didn't. What are you talking about? So that we have to look at it in such a way that a regular person who is not in politics looks at it and their bill and say, well, this actually went up. And local entities are absolutely notorious about, raising the property tax just enough to stay under the radar. And Lieutenant Governor came on SREC Zoom call a couple of days ago and talked about it. Governor Abbott talked about it, especially in Harris County. They did that. Raised enough to actually they raised even more than what the property tax relief was. So people in Harris County actually got a higher bill. A lot of places about the same bill because they basically took the money from the state, which is our tax dollars, and then used it.
We have an instance in Hays County that we just found where they have a new bond proposal, and we could do a whole show on bonds and how it raised taxes. But they're actually claiming that a $1 billion bond, it's like $960 million, according to the formula formula will not raise your taxes.
Yeah.
Now, never mind how we borrow $1 billion and pay it back without. I mean, that's obviously wrong. But what we found is because in the law, they only have to do the formula is on $100,000 of home value. So on $100,000 of home value, what would be the tax impact? Well, we just raised the homestead to $100,000. So instead of making the valuation on, say, the median home value, so like in Hays County, it's $380,000. So you would think they would have to say on a $380,000 house, here's what the tax impact would be. But the formula says they only have to use $100,000. So because we changed the law to give them a homestead exemption of $100,000, they're saying it's basically a tax rate times zero is means that there's no impact on it, and it's clearly a loophole that they're exploiting to be able to say and to go and market this $1 billion bond to be able to say, oh, there's not going to be any tax increase for you because the formula says we did a complicated formula and it's going to be zero.
Right.
It's stuff like that just drives us crazy because it's so dishonest, and that's how we end up with these tax bills the next year. And I thought there wasn't going to be any tax increase.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we definitely have a couple more issues I want to jump around to. Similar to that is, the issue of taxpayer-funded lobbying, the trying to eliminate taxpayer-funded lobbying, and all the issues. That one is that issue has been sort of in conservative circles for several sessions, but really has kind of been elevated, particularly by the lieutenant governor and folks in the House. Mays Middleton has a bill. I love his explanation of taxpayer-funded lobbying. He says, quote, "It's government lobbying government for more government."
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
What's your in terms of talking to the public about this, or talking to to Texans about it? Do they understand how this works? Are they starting to get it now a little bit that it's kind of permeating?
Yeah, not a lot of people know what it actually means, and they don't understand the impact of it either. So
what is the impact of it?
So I was at the Senate floor to testify for State Affairs Committee to testify in favor of SB 17, which is this bill, Mace's bill, and I believe it's SB 19. There was a guy sitting next to me, and he works for a city in rural Texas, and he told me that, hey, this affects me personally. And I said, tell me about it. And he goes, well, I need to be able to come here and lobby. And I said, you should. Your legislator, this is a representative republic. Your legislator should be available to you.
Yeah.
Have the conversation with them directly. And he goes, well, I don't have the time for that. I said, you should. You got elected. You wanted this job. Nobody forced you to do it.
What did you think the job was?
Yes. You're literally a representative lobbying for the people in your city. And he said, well, yeah, but, I got business and all that stuff. And I said, well, somebody else need to take your place. And he did not like me after that.
No.
But the problem I see is even having that conversation with him, and I said, hey, you were a small city. How much money do you pay? And he goes, about $4,000 a year to some of these municipal leagues and all of that stuff. And I said, how much Dallas County would pay or Dallas City would pay? Probably hundreds of thousands. You think they care about you when they get hundreds of thousands of dollars from big cities where they want all the exemptions there, all the tax credit there, all the major incentives going to them, versus you who pays them $4,000 a year? They don't care about you. That's how lobbyists work. I mean, they literally lobby for the people who pay them the most money. And he's like, yeah, I get it. But so even just having taxpayer-funded lobbying is an uneven playing field between cities, between ISDs. Who can pay the most amount of money to these lobby groups gets what they want, and everybody else kind of paying. And this is all tax dollars. Like nobody made a single dollar in profit by running a city. Everyone's dollars are coming from regular people who are paying their taxes. So.
And it's money they can't spend on. They're spending on that instead of fixing potholes and providing public safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They will defund police before they defund their taxpayer-funded lobbyist. And they've done it throughout state of Texas. Like, you look at Harris County and Houston, even Austin right here, they would defund their police department before they defund their taxpayer-funded lobbyist.
Our new research shows that as much as $98 million, almost $100 million is going from your tax dollars to go pay for these Austin lobbyists to go take their old colleagues to lunch. So that needs to stop. And it's a point of clarification, though. You're absolutely 100% right that you got elected, or not you, but the city council person or the mayor or whoever got elected to represent the constituents. And there probably is no more important way that they can represent their constituents than to make sure that like the resources are being, are coming to them, right? So picking up the phone can save you $4,000. But to that point, if the mayor is busy, there's no problem with them hiring someone on staff in order to be a lobbyist. They can hire a government relations person. Right. The issue then is, of course, that employee is now a government employee, and they are subject to all of the transparency and accountability and reporting and all of that the mayor is. And of course, that sort of defeats the whole purpose of hiring the old state legislator who can go rub elbows with his former colleagues. But that issue is pretty new in terms of the ether, I guess, in Texas. So you seem pretty bullish that some movement can happen on that this session or maybe next session.
I think we're going to get something this session. The Senate bill got a little bit gutted, not a little bit, a lot gutted, by giving some exceptions to some of these groups. I'm going to name a group. I hope that's okay. TASB is a group that we see.
We can name names here.
Yeah. We consistently see pushing woke agenda on the schools, and they're exempted by this new loophole they brought into the bill. And I'm hoping that House will fix that. I don't know if that will happen, but if they fixes that, it gives a lot of kudos to House for actually doing a conservative thing. So hopefully that's the case. But I know Mace Middleton had a conversation with the senator about this, and he's upset. That's not what he wanted, and that's not what the party wants or the grassroots want. But it did get gutted.
Ask the fish if he cares if it's a little bit gutted or a lot gutted. It's just gutted, nevertheless. A couple more issues I want to hit on. Election integrity. Obviously, that's a huge issue, particularly given your position. Texas has pretty good laws. I mean, Texas, we've got some. When we started looking, after we had the big, remember the walkout that the House Democrats did over the election integrity bill, and then it came back and we actually passed a better. Once they got back, we actually were like, well, if you're going to act that way, then we're going to put everything back in. So you passed, and it was really strong. And I've got some former colleagues of mine that we were looking at it and saying, well, how do we, what's next? And the reality is we have pretty good election integrity laws here, but you're on the front line of that. And so are there tweaks, or are there big reforms that need to happen to protect our elections?
So the party looks at it in two ways. One is, can we audit every election? Can we go back and say, if the Democrat said he won, or the EA said the Democrat won, can the party or our candidate can go audit everything? If the answer is kind of, that's not good enough. We need to be able to audit clearly and say, well, this was right, we lost, that's fine, or we won, whatever. One of the other things is in many counties, especially Democrat counties like Dallas, Harris, and Travis and all, they send out this mass mailers to everyone. It doesn't matter you're Republican, Democrat, citizen or not, illegal alien or not. You get a mailer in your mailbox during election time that says, would you like to register? And we have an incident in Garland, Dallas County. I got a call from one of our staffers, a congressional member's staffer, said their neighbor, who is a legal resident but not a citizen, received one of those mailers. And she thought her husband is an American citizen. He is registered. She thought she needed to fill that out. So she
thought it was this wasn't asking you. This was saying you had to.
You got to do this, right? And she went and filled it out. And in every registration form, there is a question: are you an American citizen? Are you a citizen? And she said no. And she actually put the name of the country where she came from, and I'm a citizen of that nation, and send it back. About 3 to 4 weeks later, she actually got a voter registration card. And she freaked out by saying, okay, what did I do wrong? I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to get in trouble. So she reached out to her friend and said, hey, how do we fix this? And, kind of ended up calling me. We got to get Attorney General Ken Paxton involved, and he did, and found out that this was not a single incident. It was a mass mailer went out to everywhere in Dallas County. We don't know how many illegals registered. We don't know how many non-citizens registered. There are things like this. It's just absolutely crazy that's happening here in Texas that we've got to stop. So election integrity is a main issue. Dr. Tom Oliverson have a bill to stop that. We testified on it. There's multiple bills that EI bills that we're working on.
That's incredible because part of the push has always been we know there are people on the rolls who should not be allowed to vote, and so whether it's like the auditing or cleaning up the rolls, that's always been a huge push. But at the same time, what you're saying is there's still an effort to get even more people on the rolls who are not eligible.
So my mom passed away about 8 months ago or so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And last week I looked at, while I was testifying, waiting for her to testify, I looked it up to see if she's still on the roll. She is. I don't know how to take it off, other than the Social Security Administration should have been notifying, and it should be an automatic thing, but she's still on the roll.
Yeah, the left has those kinds of things where you can compare records, where you compare data lists and things like that, particularly for people who have either moved out of the state or they've died or whatever. That's a huge no-no for them. Being able to do it that way, that would clean up a lot of our voter rolls. Well, you've been incredibly generous with your time. I do have a couple kind of cleanup questions I'm just curious to ask you about. It feels like it starts earlier and earlier every election cycle, but the national scene seems to think every 2 years that Texas is on, Texas is just ripe to turn blue, or that what was it, the demographics is destiny. That was a decade ago, and yet every year more and more people come here, especially from places like New York and Illinois and California. So they think, oh, this is going to go blue, and yet every year more and more people come here. More and more people vote, right? They say it's like a suppression thing. Oh, you're just suppressing the vote. But more and more people vote. And yet you look at our elections and, double digits for Cruz, double digits for Trump, double digits for Abbott and Ken Paxton and Lieutenant Governor Patrick. And yet it's all like they always seem to think that like Texas is just on the cusp of turning blue. How do you react to all that kind of
after
media push, I guess?
After 2024, I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is people staying home because they think, hey, double digits for President Trump means I don't need to go next time. Well, that's what worries me at night. It's just okay if people don't show up, we're in a deep trouble. But I don't think Texas is turning blue anytime soon. I think we have solidified Texas for a red conservative state for next 3 decades. Especially with Hispanic population moving to our side in South Texas and everywhere else. One of the reasons Harris County is in play, every Republican kind of said, I don't even want to run in Harris County anymore because it's so blue. But this time around, we start to see, hey, now people want to run because Hispanics, Black Americans are moving to Republican side. So I think there is a real good chance for us to get some Republicans elected in Harris County in the 2026 cycle. We're looking at some of the judicial races and things like that. So I'm not worried about Texas turning blue. I'm just worried about Grassroots staying home. That's the people overall. It's very conservative. And
in terms of getting out the vote, which you're absolutely right to identify that's always whoever turns out wins the election. They always say that, turnout will win the election. Well, of course. Do you see any, we've talked about a bunch of issues that are going to be on the front burner for a lot of people. Are there any other animating issues that you're looking at, not to give away your secret sauce or your strategy here, but are there any other issues maybe under the radar or, that are animating voters that you're going to to look at in order to encourage them to get out and vote?
Well, one thing that party is working very diligently is closing our primaries. That's a major issue for us. That's kind of, it's not a legislative priority, but it's a major rule change. We closed our primaries in the last convention. The next cycle, we're going to have a closed primaries, unless court or something else happens.
So you'd have to register with the party in order to vote in the primary.
Yeah. So there's a bill that Mace Middleton has put out, and Schofield in the House, that will basically close the primaries for both parties. And you don't have to be registered with the party, but if you want to be part of the primaries, you do have to register with the party. We want to have people who make a conscious decision to be part of the party, choosing our nominee for the November election. Primaries are not really election. We're making a selection to send our person to the general ballot. We want conservatives to make that choice. So that's a major thing that's happening. A couple of legislative side, I would say power grid is a major issue. Strengthening our power grid. There's not enough power. We have 85 million watts. We need about, by 2030, we're going to need about 155, and that's a lot of power.
Is that all the Bitcoin?
That's a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of things that are happening, a lot of manufacturing.
Giga Texas that Elon wants to build over here on the east side of Austin.
All of that combined, so. That's one. Water is a major issue.
Absolutely.
We're struggling with the water problems in many areas of Texas. So that's another infrastructure issue. There are some things in budget. I would say, let's go do that. Then there's a bunch of things in budget. I'm like, that's not a government issue. That's a private problem.
Yeah,
let them fix it.
Just because you brought it up, on the closed primaries, there are some that have concerns that say that would close it off to potential new voters. I mean, you've said a couple times on the show already how important that flip was for conservatives in South Texas. Someone could point to that and say, well, maybe that doesn't happen if we have a closed primary, because they're not quite ready to make the plunge and go register as a Republican, and so the message is, well, if you're not one of us, then you're not one of us. Are you worried about that message, or that it's got conflict?
Not really. The reason I say that is the difference, the time difference between March and November is pretty big. Most people will forget what they did in politics in March and in November, and good amount of Americans don't even want to be registered to one or the other party. So it's not really don't become one of us, or you have to become one of us. It's more of, if you want to choose the nominee, then be part of the party, and at least understand these are the 5 principles we have. Have basic comprehension of what a Republican is supposed to be. That's what we're looking for. We're not really, Barack Obama can move here and run as a Republican today.
That would be an interesting development.
There's nothing that I can do to stop him, because today it's an open primary, it's an open filing. There's nothing you can do about it. So that is where we're at, and that's just ridiculous. It's not safe for the party or for the state. So that's what we want to do. Move in that direction.
Well, when we have a normal show, when Derek doesn't abandon us, we always end with what to watch for. And so I'm curious, like over the next couple of weeks or maybe coming up, other than whether or not the Mavericks make it into the play-in tournament or whatever that thing's called at the beginning of the playoffs, and see how they do. Other than that, what are you looking for between now and Sine Die?
Well, I think we're looking for about 3 or 4 things. Taxpayer-funded lobbying is major one. Some election bills that are huge. I think with school choice, as it is, it's going to pass because we have 76 co-authors already, so it's gonna a done deal. I think that's happening next week or week after or something like that. So major things that I see that are not really on the front burner with the legislators that I would like to see, some of those would be like stop sexualizing our children's priority. That's a major priority for us, things like that. So I think once the budget is done and the school choice is done, I think both chambers are going to get a lot more conservative in getting things done, because Democrats are now holding it hostage, basically. So even though they shouldn't be able to, because we have 88 people on our side, but politics is politics. I get it. So that's what we're looking for in the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This has been a fantastic inaugural visit to our podcast. I hope that you'll come back and visit us again, maybe after the session, and we'll talk about what was accomplished and get your thoughts on what maybe did happen and didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, you can find us online I'm at Real Beefill. Derek's online as well. So if you have any questions or comments or feedback, or we love the hate too. We love the comments and get it all stirred up. Again, thank you so much to our guest, Republican Chairman Abraham George, for being with us. Thank you for listening. And as we always like to say at the end of the show, in the immortal words of Sam Houston, do good and risk the consequences. We'll see you next time.